The silent arrival. The night sky above Earth was quiet. The stars looked like small lamps hanging in the black distance, but far beyond the clouds, something moved. It was not a bird, not a plane, not anything humans had seen before. It was a small, silver spacecraft, no bigger than a truck. Its surface shimmered like water under moonlight. It glided silently through the cold air, leaving no sound, no trail. Inside the ship sat a tiny alien girl named Lyra. Lyra had eyes that glowed like liquid silver. Her skin was pale with a faint blue tint. Her hair floated around her head as if the air itself loved her. She was young, only 14 years old by her people's count. Her hands were small but steady, resting on the ship's control crystal. Her heart beat fast. She was about to see something she had only read about in secret files. She was about to see a human. Her mission was clear. Her leaders had told her to study humans and decide if they were dangerous. Her people had watched Earth from far away for many years. They believed humans were violent and selfish. But there were whispers, quiet voices in the shadows, saying humans were different, that they had something rare, something powerful called bonds. Lyra did not know what bonds were, but the word made her curious, and so she had agreed to come here. Her ship entered the thick clouds above a forest. She felt the air grow warmer. Raindrops hit the craft's skin and slid away without a sound. She adjusted the controls and guided the ship lower. The forest opened beneath her like a dark ocean of leaves. Tall trees stood like silent guards, hiding the ground from the sky, the perfect place to land without being seen. The ship touched down between two massive oak trees. Its legs sank softly into the damp soil. Lyra stood up and pressed her face to the clear dome of the cockpit. The air outside was heavy, full of scents she had never smelled before. Wet leaves, fresh rain, earth, and something sweet she could not name. She pressed a button and the hatch slid open. Cool night air rushed in, wrapping around her like a whisper. She stepped out, her bare feet touching the soft moss. The ground felt alive under her toes. She turned her head slowly, listening. Insects hummed in the dark, and somewhere far away, an owl called. She walked a few steps away from the ship. Every shadow looked like it could be hiding something. She did not know if humans could see in the dark as she could. She hoped not. Suddenly, she heard a sound that froze her in place. It was not the wind. It was not the animals. It was slow, heavy, and deliberate. Footsteps. Someone was walking nearby, crushing leaves and twigs under their weight. Her heart raced. She crouched low and hid behind a fallen log covered in mushrooms. The footsteps came closer. Lyra's breathing grew shallow. She peeked over the log. Between the branches, she saw movement. A shadow taller than any creature she knew from her world. It moved carefully, carrying something long in one hand. The shadow stopped and a faint glow lit up its face. It was different. The skin was warm in color, the eyes deep and alive. The mouth moved slightly, as if speaking to itself. This was it. This was a human. She felt a strange pull in her chest. Something about the way the human's eyes scanned the forest made her want to keep looking. But she remembered her mission. Observe, do not engage. She crouched lower, holding her breath. The human bent down and picked up a piece of wood. He carried it to a small pile, stacking it carefully. Then he struck something in his other hand, creating tiny sparks. Lyra flinched at the sudden light. The sparks became a small fire, warm and alive. The glow spread over the man's face, showing lines of thought and calm. She had never seen anything like it. Her people did not make fire. They did not sit close to it for warmth. They did not hum quietly the way this human did as he worked. She found herself leaning closer without meaning to. The scent of the fire mixed with the forest air. It made her feel something she could not name. Not fear, not danger. Something else. The human suddenly stopped. His head turned, his eyes looking right toward the log where she hid. Lyra's heart jumped. Had he seen her? The fire crackled softly between them. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the human took a slow step toward her hiding place. Another step, and another. Lyra pressed herself against the log, ready to run. But then, something unexpected happened. The human reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of bread. He placed it gently on a flat rock a few steps away. Then he stepped back, sitting down by the fire again. It was as if he was waiting for her, inviting her. But how could he know she was there? She stayed hidden. The night grew deeper. The bread sat untouched. The fire glowed softly. The human waited, patient and calm. Lyra felt the pull again. Her mission was to watch, not to speak, not to touch, but her curiosity burned hotter than the fire. And deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. First contact. The bread sat on the rock, untouched. The small fire whispered to the night, its glow dancing on the human's face. Lyra stayed hidden, but her eyes never left him. He was unlike the images she had seen in her people's archives. He looked softer, warmer, and yet strong in a way she could not understand. The human, Daniel, though Lyra did not know his name yet, sat still. He stared at the forest as if it was an old friend. Every now and then his gaze shifted toward the shadows where she hid. He did not call out, did not chase. Instead, he hummed a slow tune. It was a sound without words, yet it reached her ears like a gentle hand. Her kind never sang. Music was forbidden among her people. They said it made the mind weak, but here, in this strange place, it made her chest ache in a new way. A sudden crack of a twig snapped the moment. Lyra turned her head sharply. Far to her left, the forest moved, not by the wind, but by something alive. Her people's training told her to leave, but her legs did not obey. She wanted to see what he would do. Daniel turned his head toward the sound too. His hand reached for something at his side, a long, sharp tool, not to strike at her, but to defend himself. His eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in readiness. He was not just waiting for her, he was protecting the space between them. From the darkness, two glowing points appeared. Eyes, a creature emerged, its fur dark and wet from the rain. It was larger than Lyra, its teeth flashing in the firelight. She recognized it from her files. A predator of this world. Daniel rose slowly, putting himself between the fire and the animal. He spoke low and firm, his voice steady like a stone in a river. The animal stepped closer, testing him. Lyra's fingers tightened on the edge of the log. Her instinct screamed to stay hidden, but something inside pushed her forward. Without thinking, she stepped out from behind the log. Her small frame caught in the firelight. Daniel's eyes widened, not in fear, but in shock. The animal turned its gaze toward her, its body lowering, ready to strike. In that heartbeat, Lyra's training returned. Her hand moved to the device on her wrist. A flash of blue light burst from it, striking the ground in front of the beast. The predator yelped, then fled into the darkness. The forest fell silent again. For a long moment, the two stood frozen, Daniel staring at her, she staring at him. The fire popped softly between them. He stepped forward, slow, careful. Lyra's breath caught. He was taller than she had imagined, his presence like a wall of heat. His eyes searched hers, not with suspicion, but with a question she could not name. Then without a word, he picked up the bread from the rock. He held it out to her, his hand open, palm up, no threat, no command, just an offering. Lyra stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the moss. She reached out, her fingers brushing the roughness of the bread and the warmth of his skin. Her people avoided touch, but this was different. It felt alive. She took the bread, sniffed it, then bit softly. It was warm and strange, but good. She looked at him and spoke her first human word. Thank you. Her voice was rough, but the meaning was clear. Daniel smiled, a small curve of his mouth. It was not the sharp smile of her people. It was something lighter. He gestured toward the fire, then sat down again. For a moment she hesitated, then she stepped forward, sitting opposite him, the flames between them. No words passed, but something deeper did. Lyra did not know if this was the bond she had heard about, but she knew one thing. She wanted to understand more, and she could feel, in the quiet of the forest, that the night had only just begun. Curiosity wins. The fire's glow painted their faces in gold. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Lyra sat still, the bread warm in her hands. Daniel watched her, his eyes calm but alert. Neither spoke. Yet the silence felt full, not empty. Every sound in the night seemed sharper now. The crackle of the fire, the slow drip of rain from the leaves. Her people would have called this a waste of time. They believed every second must be used for purpose. But here, the seconds felt alive, as if something important was happening without words. Daniel reached for his stick and poked at the fire. The flames leapt higher, sending sparks into the air. Lyra's eyes followed the movement. She had seen fire in data recordings, but never smelled its smoke, never felt its heat wrap around her skin. She leaned closer, and her eyes reflected the light like two small moons. Her mind told her to leave before more humans came, but her heart, a thing she never used in decisions, told her to stay. This man had not attacked her. He had not captured her for study. He had offered food, warmth, and space beside the fire. It was a gesture her people had no word for. Daniel broke the silence first. He picked up a stone and pointed at it. "Rock," he said slowly and clearly. Lyra blinked. She repeated the sound in her own soft voice. "Rock." He smiled faintly and nodded. Then he pointed at himself. "Daniel." She tilted her head, studying the shape of his lips. "Dan. Yell," she repeated. The name felt strange but pleasant in her mouth. She hesitated, then placed her hand on her chest. "Lyra," she said. His eyebrows lifted slightly as if marking the moment. The lesson continued. He pointed at the fire. "Fire." She said it back, then pointed at him. "Human." He chuckled, a sound so sudden and warm that it made her pause. Her people did not laugh. Laughter was seen as weakness. But here it felt like the air itself grew lighter. Then, without warning, the night shifted. A deep rumble rolled through the forest. Not thunder. Something mechanical. Lyra froze, her ears catching the sound instantly. It was far away but moving closer. She knew that search drones. Her people were here. They would scan the area, find her, and erase everything she had seen. She looked at Daniel. He saw the change in her face. His hand tightened on the tool at his side. "What's wrong?" he asked, but she could not answer in his words. Instead, she stood quickly and stepped away from the fire, her silver eyes scanning the treetops. The sound grew louder, a faint red light flickering between the branches. Daniel stood too, following her gaze. He could not see the machines yet, but he sensed danger. He moved closer to her, his voice low. "Stay close." She almost laughed at the idea of him protecting her from her own people. But the thought vanished when a beam of red light swept across the far edge of the forest. Lyra's chest tightened. If they found her, they would take her away, and she would never see this strange human again. For the first time in her life, she made a choice without thinking of the mission. She reached out and grabbed his hand. His warmth shocked her. Her people did not touch, but in that moment, it felt right. Daniel looked at her hand in his, then at her face. He didn't pull away. He simply nodded once, as if saying, "I understand." Somewhere above, the mechanical hum grew sharper. Lyra's time was running out. And yet, instead of fear, she felt something new in her chest, something that whispered. She was not alone anymore, learning each other. The forest was no longer quiet. Far above, the faint hum of the search drones drifted through the air. Their sound was soft but constant, like a warning that never faded. Lyra and Daniel stayed close to the fire, but both of them knew. This peace was fragile. One wrong move and the night would change forever. Daniel reached for a small metal cup near his pack. He poured water into it, then placed it over the fire. The water hissed softly as it warmed. Lyra leaned forward, watching the steam rise. Her people did not heat water. They drank it cold and pure. But here, even this small act felt like a ritual. He handed her the cup carefully. She held it between her palms, feeling the heat seep into her skin. For the first time, she realized warmth was not only a thing you felt outside, it could also grow inside. Daniel pointed it. "The cup. Water." She repeated, "Waiter." Then she pointed at the sky. "Stars." His eyes lit up. He said the word back to her, but softer, as if tasting it. They exchanged more words. Simple things like tree, fire, hand. But with each one, she felt a strange connection forming. It was as if every word was a tiny bridge between their worlds. The search drones passed overhead, their red lights scanning the treetops. Daniel noticed her glance upward every few minutes. He didn't understand what hunted her, but he understood fear, so he did something she did not expect. He reached into his pack and pulled out a folded cloth. Slowly, he draped it over her shoulders. The fabric was rough but warm. Her people never covered each other for protection. This gesture, it felt like being guarded. She wanted to tell him everything. Who she was, why she came, why the sky was dangerous tonight. But the words were too heavy for her small human vocabulary. So instead, she pointed at her chest and said softly, "Not safe." He frowned, not in anger but in worry. Then he tapped his own chest and said, "With me, safe." She didn't know why, but she believed him. The fire crackled low. Daniel picked up a thin stick and began drawing shapes in the dirt. Circles for planets. Lines for paths through space. Lyra's eyes widened. He was guessing her origin. She knelt beside him, adding her own shapes with quick, sure strokes. A small spiral for her star, a single dot for her home world. He studied her drawing with deep focus. When he looked back at her, his eyes held no fear, only fascination. The hum above grew louder. One of the drones dipped lower, scanning with a sharper beam. Lyra's pulse quickened. Daniel noticed and quickly kicked dirt over the fire. The flames died, plunging them into near darkness. The forest returned to its natural shadows, only the faint silver of moonlight. They touched their faces. They crouched together behind the fallen log. The drone's light passed dangerously close. Daniel's breathing was steady. Lyra's was not. In the stillness, she felt his hand rest lightly over hers. Not pulling, not forcing, just there. It was the first time in her life she understood what it meant to share fear, to carry it together instead of alone. The drone's hum faded, swallowed by the night. They stayed hidden for several long breaths before moving again. Daniel lit the smallest flame he could, just enough to see each other's faces. Lyra realized something strange. Even though her people had far greater technology, she had never felt safer than she did in that small circle of light with him. And in that moment, she knew, if her people found her, they wouldn't just take her body back, they would erase this feeling. And that thought was more terrifying than any weapon. Danger in the woods. The night was no longer calm. The hum of the search drones grew louder, sharper. Lyra's silver eyes narrowed as she looked toward the treetops. They were close. Too close. The red scanning beams swept through the forest like hunting snakes. Every movement of light made her heart jump. Daniel didn't know what these machines were, but he didn't need to. He saw the fear in her eyes and understood one thing. They had to move. He grabbed his pack, stomped out the small fire, and nodded toward the deeper forest. Lyra hesitated only a moment before following. Her bare feet made no sound, but his heavier steps crunched the wet leaves. Each sound felt like it could betray them. A sudden burst of light swept across the ground just behind them. Lyra grabbed Daniel's hand and pulled him toward the thicker undergrowth. They dropped low, crawling through ferns and roots. Above, the drone hovered, its camera shifting from side to side. It let out a low pulse, a scanning signal. Her wrist device blinked in warning. If they stayed still too long, the heat sensors would find them. She tapped Daniel's arm and pointed. Here. It was a fallen tree, its trunk hollow and wide enough for them to hide. They slid inside, pressed close in the darkness. The smell of damp wood and earth surrounded them. The beam of red light passed over the log once, then twice. Each time it lingered just long enough to make her grip tighten on his arm. Then, without warning, the sound of more drones joined the first. 3, maybe 4 now. Their hum filled the night, blending into one long metallic growl. Lyra's mind raced. If her people were using this many units, it meant they were not just searching, they were hunting. And they would not stop until she was taken. Daniel's hand found hers in the dark. It was not a question, it was a silent promise. We moved together. She nodded once, then scanned the area through a small crack in the trunk. The drones were circling toward the east. That meant the western ridge might be clear. She motioned for them to go. They crawled out and moved quickly. The forest floor sloped upward, roots like twisted ropes under their feet. Lyra's breathing was steady, but Daniel's was heavier. She slowed just enough for him to keep pace. The hum of the drones shifted behind them. They had noticed movement. A beam of light slashed past Daniel's shoulder. He spun toward it, gripping his tool like a weapon. But Lyra grabbed his arm, shaking her head. Fighting them would be useless. They ran. Branches whipped past, the ground uneven and slick. The sound of the drones grew louder, closing in. Lyra tapped her wrist device, sending a small burst of static into the air. The nearest drone sputtered, its light flickering. It spun out of control and crashed into the trees. The explosion was small but loud enough to make the others change course. Daniel glanced at her in shock. "You can fight them," he whispered, but she shook her head. "Only little," she said, her words short but urgent. I pushed on, reaching the top of the ridge. Below them was a narrow river, its surface black under the moon. Lyra pointed. Water could hide their heat signatures. Daniel didn't hesitate. They slid down the slope, rocks tumbling under their feet, and plunged into the freezing current. The cold bit into her skin, but she kept moving. Daniel stayed close, his hand never letting go of hers. The drones passed overhead, scanning the opposite bank. The water muffled their sounds. They stayed submerged as long as they could, coming up only for quick breaths. Finally, after what felt like hours, the hum began to fade. They crawled out onto the far bank, dripping and shivering. Daniel dropped to one knee, catching his breath. Lyra knelt beside him, listening. The forest was quiet again, but she knew this was not over. Her people would not stop until they had her. And now, they had seen her with a human. That changed everything. The choice. The riverbank was cold under Lyra's knees. Her wet hair clung to her face, drops sliding down like tiny beads of glass. Daniel was still breathing hard, his hands resting on the ground. Above them, the moon shone pale, and for a moment the forest looked peaceful again. But peace was a lie. The hum of the drones might have faded, but her people would return. Lyra's eyes searched the shadows beyond the trees. Somewhere out there, hidden under leaves and roots, was her escape pod. It was her only way back to her world. It was safety. It was also a prison. If she returned, her memories of this place, of him, would be erased. She would go back to living in the cold silence of her people. No warmth, no firelight, no laughter, no hand to hold in the dark. Daniel lifted his head and looked at her. He didn't speak, but his eyes asked the question she didn't want to hear. What now? She swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. Pod. Near, she said, pointing west. His gaze followed her gesture, then came back to her face. He nodded slowly, but there was no relief in his expression. He understood without words. If she FT, they would never see each other again. If she stayed, she would become a target for her own kind. The silence between them felt heavy. Even the forest seemed to hold back its breath. Daniel stood and shouldered his pack. He stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. I'll remember you, he said quietly. It was a simple promise, but it hit her like a strike to the heart. Her people believed nothing lasted forever. But here was a human speaking as if memories could outlive distance, outlive danger, outlive fear. A faint tremor ran through the ground beneath their feet. Lyra turned sharply toward the west. Her people's transport ship was descending. Its engines rumbled low, shaking the leaves. She could already imagine the blinding searchlights, the cold metallic hands dragging her away. Daniel's grip on her shoulder tightened. Not to hold her back, but to steady her. Her mind raced. The mission said, go home. Her heart said stay. If she went back, she would be safe but empty. If she stayed, she would be hunted but alive in a way she had never felt before. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of smoke from the small fire they had left behind. That scent, human, wild, warm, filled her lungs. It was more than just air. It was a memory already burning inside her, one she couldn't bear to lose. She looked up at him. His eyes held no demand, no command, only choice. For the first time in her life, no one was telling her what to do. The decision was hers alone. The rumble of the ship grew louder. The trees shook with its approach. Lyra's pulse matched the pounding in the earth. Her choice would change everything, and she knew she had only seconds left to make it. She took a single step away from the direction of the pod, then another, and then she was standing beside Daniel. Her small hand slipped into his, her silver eyes steady, her voice low but clear. I stay, she said. Above them, the shadows of the ship passed overhead. The searchlights swept the forest, but they did not stop. The engines faded into the distance. The night returned, and Lyra knew there was no going back now. A new bond. The forest was still again, but it was not the same stillness as before. It was the stillness after a storm, when the air is heavy and alive. Lyra stood beside Daniel, her small hands still locked in his. The distant hum of the ship was gone, swallowed by the night, but she knew her people would not stop. They never stopped. Daniel looked at her, his brow furrowed in thought. There was no victory in his expression, only awareness that the danger was not over, but his grip was steady, as if to say they would face it together. For the first time, she didn't feel small in the shadow of the trees. She felt anchored. They began walking, moving deeper into the forest. Daniel's steps were heavy, breaking twigs underfoot. Hers were light, barely touching the ground. Two rhythms, two worlds somehow in sync. Above them, the stars blinked through the shifting leaves. She found herself staring up at them, wondering which tiny light was her home, and why, now, it felt so far away. Daniel led her to a small ridge. From here, the forest stretched for miles. The river shimmered below like a dark ribbon. She could almost see the place where they had hidden. She could almost see the moment her life had changed. She didn't know if her people could sense this strange bond. But a part of her feared they could. They reached a small clearing where the moonlight touched the ground. Daniel stopped and turned to her. "You'll need to stay hidden," he said slowly, using words she understood. "Until safe." She nodded, but inside she knew there might never be safe. Not in the way he meant. Not as long as the stars were watching. The wind shifted, carrying a faint sound from far away. Not the hum of drones. Not yet. But something else. Something that made the hair on her neck rise. It was a whisper, almost like a voice. Her own language, carried on the air. She froze. Daniel noticed instantly, his eyes scanning the trees. "What is it?" he asked. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. The whisper faded, but the unease stayed. If her people had sent a call, it meant they were close again, closer than either of them could guess. But instead of fear, she felt a strange fire building in her chest. She had made her choice. She would not run back to them. She would not let them erase what she had found here. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low. "Whatever comes, we face it." She looked up at him. His words were simple, but they felt heavier than anything her people had ever taught her. He was not her kind, but in that moment he was more hers than anyone in the stars. They moved on, leaving the clearing behind. The forest swallowed them. Only the moonlight touched their path. Above, unseen in the darkness, a faint red light blinked once, and then again. Somewhere far beyond the treetops, someone was still watching. The night was not over, and neither was their story.